And I'm just going to talk. And don't have a PowerPoint. No, I mean, seriously, that's a really tough act to follow. Okay, but I'll try. So the idea for this talk came to me almost immediately after Susan Drucker asked me to contribute something on the subject for a different venue than this one. And the gods shone down on me, and on the very day I sat down and began to write in earnest, an article showed up by a woman named Yan Wu, who was in air quotes here, opinion graphics reporter for the Washington Post. Wu's article was entitled, "Why Musicians Are Smart to Embrace AI." In the name of clarity, by the way, what it means to be an opinion graphics reporter is that Wu is and again, air quotes, a front-end developer on the opinions desk who uses programming, interactive graphics, and 3D models to create immersive stories. The gist of her article is as follows. Number one, that AI, and I'm quoting, allows anyone to produce professional sounding music in virtually any genre. That's her opening sentence. She does not go on to explain what professional sounding music actually means. I might have replaced the modifier professional with the word adequate. Number two, that major industry groups have teamed up to sue popular AI music apps Suno and Udio, accusing them of copyright infringement. Number three, that lawsuits like this could help safeguard the rights of musicians and record labels, though their effect could take years, and that in the meantime, AI could well present more opportunities than challenges for musicians. Number four, that AI-generated songs lack the fluidity of music created by humans. Interesting word, that fluidity. I am not sure what she means. And finally, number five, that musicians who experiment with AI can give themselves an edge in an evolving industry. And emphasis on this sentence, AI can expedite their own creative work and provide inspiration. Well, let me begin to offer my 2 cents on the subject by pointing out that Wu conflates in her argument 4 things. The first is the production of what she calls a professional sounding music recording. The second is the musical performances, whether they're derived from what were originally human performances, whether they're derived from human voices and human-made acoustic and electric instruments and other sounds, or whether they're derived from what was digital, synthetic, or AI-generated in the first place. The third thing she conflates is composition itself, and the fourth is arrangement. Well, as a composer and author, and I hope maybe honorary member of 404, to borrow from the ASCAP acronym, I'm right, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, I'm really interested in the last two. I am interested in composition and arrangement. And I'm interested in really the original conceptualization of music that is worth listening to before we actually go through the process of producing it for a listener's ear. I'm also interested in the whole of the composition that is music and words. Such a whole derives from, well, one, the structure and sequence of what is linear through time, a musical foundation that's linear through time, what a composer might refer to as the chord changes, but what is really about the variations of verse, chorus, bridge, what the Beatles used to refer to as the middle eight, and also, preludes, codas, and the like. I'm interested in the vertical structure of arrangement, which is the layering of instrumental parts on top of one another. I am interested in the salient melody lines, sung or instrumental, and the sequential connection of melody lines from one section to another, for example, from verse to chorus. I am interested in the addition of words that not only fit the rhythm of a particular melody line, but also match with the overall tenor of the piece taken as a whole. And finally, I'm interested in the fact that its superior song, a work of musical art, shall we say, with at least one salient hook, is the product of all of these components coming together into a greater whole in such a way that each reinforces but also really extends and embellishes all the others. And so my question that drives this inquiry is simply this. Can AI produce composition, can an AI produce composition, achieve and attain such an outcome? A program can certainly be written to create and provide the component parts, but can it possibly put forth a great transcendent work of art? Well, as I began to think about this after Susan's prompt, it hit me right away that music itself is a matter of mathematics. It is in ways that range from the nature of sympathetic vibration and harmonic equivalence, right? That the A near the center of the piano keyboard is ever so slightly off a 440 hertz tone, which then sets off the vibration of the A's an octave above and an octave below, which, are just off A880 and A220. And then the fifths or the next harmonic equivalent, right? The E's that are right between A, B, C, D, E, right? The fifth, that are approximately 660 hertz and 330 hertz. And then there's all of these other mathematical considerations like the circle of fifths, which explains the series and sequence of sharps and flats in each key. I could go on. But my point in pointing this out is that the basis of information processing is mathematics, which is to say that coding, programming, algorithmic programming, AI and AGI programming and the like are also obviously a matter of math. Let's add Susan Langer to the mix, who told us that math is one of our two discursive forms of symbolic communication, the other, of course, being our primary discursive form, our verbal language. And the possibilities with respect to composition in both verbal language and music are effectively infinite. That's why we're still up here talking in 2024. It follows then that music can be created through coding, as can a lyric, and that the possibilities therein are similarly all but infinite. However, all of this leads to 5 important philosophical questions. First, why would anyone want to use AI to create and produce music? Second, who would want to use it to do so? Third, can AI create good or better, great music? Fourth, can a program be written that effectively combines words and music on equal and related terms and which result in a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts? And finally, what is the difference between music created by a human being and music created via machine learning and code? Well, in the brief time that I have here today, let me try to at least begin to answer these 5 questions. First, why would anyone want to use AI to create and produce music with the aim, as with all of our media arts, to conjure up great and lasting work? My answer to this question is a simple one, so simple that you may think I am being facetious or sarcastic. People do so because we can, or at least because people think or believe we can. This then leads directly to the nature of my second question, which is who would want to use AI to create and produce music? I remember when I was starting out as a musician and a songwriter, and personal computers were first coming into use. Yes, I'm dating myself. People who could not compose very well, if at all, but who wished they could, believed that a program could be written that could do the job for them, as though it were just some sort of formula. Or they realized how hard it was to go to the well time and again and come back with something, even adequate and average. And they believed a program could do this work for them, saving them the trouble, while also being more efficient and maybe more effective. Or they were people who really never cared about music as artistic practice in the first place, or about the process, the why that leads to the how of music making, but were simply interested to introduce music into the commercial marketplace so as to profit from it. Well, now we get to the hard questions. Can AI create and produce good or better, great music? The answer here goes beyond the complexity of all of the musical components layered and fixed together. With respect to my fourth question, can a program be written that effectively combines words and music on equal and related terms and which result in a whole that is greater than the sum of its parts? Well, the answer goes beyond the need to create a program for the music, a program for the lyrics, and a program that includes both, that somehow fuses the two together as equal and equally important partners, or rather, and better, which treats the two as one. Thinking about these things brings me back to Langer, whose book from the first half of the last century, Philosophy in a New Key, remains a great gift to us in thinking about these things, arguably the most significant and generative foundation for doing so. Not to mention her work, Feeling and Form, which she followed up. But her thinking prompted me to answer these questions in the following way. Let me begin not with music, but with the words. As Langer and so many others point out to us, verbal language is not only our common denominator for thinking about meaning and things meaningful, it is also, to borrow from Christy Nystrom, our primary tool for telling. As such, it is the device, the instrument, the invention that makes us the rational animal and which enabled us to use our primary organ, our evolved higher brain, to gain dominion over our planet and all the creatures who share it with us. It is, in Langer's words, our technology to exercise, to allow and enable reason, logic, abstraction, ideas. But that has nothing to do with lyrics. Words as lyrics are not necessarily poetry, the words of Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen and Joni Mitchell and others, similar artists notwithstanding. But lyrics are always more akin to poetry than they are about using language in the ways we normally do, in the attempt to ensure that any meaning we intend and produce is the meaning that others receive and make. Right? That is to say, so that we can be understood and certainly not be misunderstood. In the simplest of terms, then, lyrics, like poetry, are about putting two words together that have never been put together before. They're about playing. They're about trying to find some way to be original, about trying to avoid the cliche, about using verbal language not as we typically use it, but in the service of art. And even a novelist can tell you how hard it is to fashion words in such a way that moves people, that draws forth an emotional response in a reader or auditor. Thus, the code to write a lyric must be written to achieve this. And of course, while it is an art form to code well, artists themselves do not typically write code. More importantly, though, I'm not even sure such code can be written. It must be a code made up of rules. Like all code, the function of which is to develop and learn ways to break many of the standard rules of language use. And then we get to music. The purpose of music as a human symbolic system, again with a nod to Langer, is a matter of her elegant phrase, creating and communicating forms of feeling. While I can, in a context such as this one, try to deposit a thought or idea into your head, I cannot deposit an emotional, visceral, feelings-based response into your experience. With music, if you're willing, interested, if you're an open auditor, and if I do my job well, the form may elicit in you such an emotional, visceral, or feelings-based response. Okay, so foundation laid. Now, imagine writing the code that creates such music and which simultaneously plays with words, and which recognizes and creates a connection between the right music and the right words, such that the words make the music better and the music makes the words better, and together the whole of the thing becomes something we recognize as special and sublime, as a work of art. If this is possible, I want to hear it. I do. I will know it when I hear it, and I will admit to my speciesist bias. I will admit that a form of real artistic intelligence has been arrived at and is at work. But in saying this, and finally, my last question. What is the difference between music created by human beings and music created via machine learning and code? Well, first, I'm one of the people who's written about the history of our musical tools, technologies, our musical instruments, and how the development of these instruments tells the story, is telling of the history of music. With the tools of machine learning and AGI, however, we're not talking about tools by which we create music. We're talking about tools that will create music for us, or which will replace us as creators, or in Wu's take on the matter, will become co-authors and co-composers with us. Finally, though, we need to ask, why do humans create music? Well, those of us who do create it because we walk around in the world listening for it, or because we hear it in our heads. We create it because we have the artistic and symbol-making impulse and drive to do this kind of work and to bring such work to fruition. Artificial intelligence and artificial generative intelligence, however, whether the humans do the coding or whether the machines learn how to do the coding themselves, do not and will never have this impulse. They are, after all, only pulse and no pulse. Thanks.